Well, the last several weeks we have been working on the book of Proverbs. We've made our way through the first 9 chapters. We've kind of gone chapter by chapter, but from this Sunday on, we're going to take a little different tact. We're going to be a little more selective in what we look at. We're going to look at some life topics, and because we defined wisdom as life skills, skillful living, living life with skill, and Proverbs helps us understand some of those life skills we need. And today we're going to focus on the one of our first ones, and that is in the life skill of friendship. We're going to look at 3 questions, but I want to start, before we get to that, I want to begin by asking you, what is a friend? How do you define a friend? What are your thoughts? What's a friend? Loving. Honest. Somebody you trust. Ben?
Someone who still acts as your friend even in the presence of others that would think otherwise.
Okay. Consistently your friend. That's a great one. Loyal. Pardon? Dependent. Okay. Well, there was another one. Selfless, reliable. Those are great definitions. I have a video to kind of get us started thinking and to kind of stimulate our thinking a little bit. What is a friend? Sesame Street helps us out. If somebody would get the lights.
Oh, me love it when you come over. We love having friends over.
Oh, thanks, Cookie Monster.
Yeah, you're good to play with. We love to play.
I love to play with you.
Yeah, but now it's snack time.
Snack time!
Yeah.
My tummy's rumbling.
Oh, boy.
I'm hankering for-
Cookie!
Oh.
Cookie!
Good.
Ha! Mmm. Well, let me get you. You hungry?
Well, just a little bit.
Sometime me think, what is friend? And me think friend something very special. A friend, somebody to share your toys, to stay with and play with and make a lot of noise, to spin around until friend get dizzy and jump up and down until stomach get queasy, and sometimes tell stories too. A friend, yeah, somebody like you. Sometime me think, what is friend? Friend something better than chocolate ice cream. A friend somebody to take to the park. A buddy to get muddy with till it start getting dark. To laugh and joke and hippity hop it, or tickle and poke till friend tell you to stop it. And me can't think of any more. Well, maybe friend somebody you give up last cookie for.
Wait a minute, Cookie Monster. I have an idea. Why don't we just share the cookie?
No. You go ahead.
What?
Friend, eat cookie.
Oh.
Yeah, there.
Wow. Well, thanks, Cookie Monster. Wow.
Me feel strangely okay about this.
What's a friend? I found a couple definitions. I like this one. A friend is someone I could call at 4 a.m. and say, I need you to help me bury a body. And he'd come with a shovel and no questions asked. What was that? A publication offered a prize for the best definition. And they put it just a little more seriously. It says, a friend is one who multiplies joys, divides grief, and whose honesty is inviolable. A friend is one who understands our silence. A friend is a volume of sympathy bound up in cloth. A friend is a watch that beats true for all time and never runs down. A friend is one, and this is the winner, a friend is one who comes in when the whole world has gone out. Friendship. Solomon has a lot to say about it. And as I went through the scriptures in the book of Proverbs, I found out Solomon answered basically 3 questions about friendship. Number 1, he answers the question of why do we need friends? Second is who should be our friends, or who should we pursue as friends? And then how to develop and maintain friendships. 3 basic questions. I want to begin with that first one. Why do we need friends? Do we need friends? It's obvious if you look through Scripture. It doesn't take much to understand that God never meant life to be a solo act. He intended it to be lived as a part of an ensemble. He intended us to be working together, living together, and supporting one another. Solomon provides a couple good answers why we need friends. And the first one is we need friends to comfort us when times get difficult. If you look at Proverbs 17:17, and take some time to look at these, I'm not going to read them all, but Proverbs 17:17, if I can get my Bible to open there, says this: a friend loves at all times, and a brother is born for adversity. What happens when life goes south on you? We need someone to be there to stand beside us, to comfort us through it all. I read a story this week about the Lone Ranger and Tonto. They were out and they were surrounded by thousands of hostile indigenous natives. And Lone Ranger looked at Tonto and said, for those of you who are not acquainted, indigenous natives would be American Indians. They're surrounded by them, and the Lone Ranger looks at Tonto and he says, "Well, Tonto, it looks like we're in for a lot of trouble." And Tonto's response was, "Ugh, what do you mean we?" We need somebody to be with us. I have a video. A video again. I want you to see about the need and how important it is. So again, the lights, but this is from the movie 42, the story of Jackie Robinson.
They can say all they want. We're just here to play ball.
It's just a bunch of crackpots still fighting the Civil War.
Well, hell, we'd have won that son of a gun if the cornstalks would have held out. We just ran out of ammunition.
Better luck next time, Pee-wee.
Ain't gonna be a next time, Jakes. All we got's right here. Thank you, Jakes.
What are you thanking me for?
I got family up there from Louisville. I need them to know. I need them to know who I am.
Hey, number 1! You playing ball or socializing?
Playing ball, Unc.
Play ball! Don't let us get to you!
Playing ball. Maybe tomorrow we'll all wear 42. That way they won't tell us apart.
Reflecting on that moment, Jackie Robinson said that arm around my shoulder probably saved my career. It was one of the darkest moments. He committed an error, and his hometown fans wanted his blood. And Pee Wee Reese from the South came over and put his arms around his shoulder. He said, "That saved my career." Have we not all had friends who have been there at that moment and literally saved our lives? Whose presence made a difference? What if that person wasn't there? Solomon says you need to have friends in your life because you need comfort. But he also, in Ecclesiastes 4, 9 through 12, it talks about two strands being easily broken. A three is not, or single strand is easily broken. Two strands is difficult to break, and three strands can't be broken. We need each other. As I reflected on that, I thought about the three strands. The two strands are me and one other person. The third strand in that strand is God and Jesus. We need friends for strength during difficult times. We need friends for counsel. Look at just Proverbs 27 has several verses in it that have to deal with that. In Proverbs 27, verses 5 and 6, he says, "Better is open rebuke than hidden love. Wounds from a friend can be trusted, but an enemy multiplies kisses." And as you go on down to verse 9, he says, "Perfume and incense bring joy to the heart, and pleasantness of one's friend springs from his earnest counsel." And finally, verse 17, "As iron sharpens iron, so one man sharpens another." Folks, let me put it this way. We need friends in our lives who are willing to come to us, listen to our ideas, and look us straight in the eye and say, "Are you crazy?" We need friends who will tell us the truth, friends who will help us see our better perspective on things. We need friends. Why do we need friends? He gives us some great reasons. He gives us two very good reasons here. He put it in 11:4, he said, "For lack of counsel, a nation falls. In many advisors, their success." How many of you have friends that you can go to anytime and ask their perspective and help? What would you do without those friends? I hate to imagine all the things that I would have done in my lifetime if I didn't have that friend that says, "That's the dumbest thing I've ever heard." We need friends who will counsel us and help us understand what to do. Well, let's say, who should we choose as friends? We need them, but there's nothing more dangerous than choosing the wrong ones. I have a quote from a book by Leslie Parrott, who's a counselor. She wrote a book on relationships and talks about the value, but also the importance of choosing friends. She says, "Friends make ordinary running errands or eating lunch, for example, extraordinarily fun. A good friend eases our pain and lightens our heavy load. Not only are friends good for the soul, but the body as well. Friends help us ward off depression, boost our immune system, lower our cholesterol, increase the odds of surviving coronary disease, and keep stress hormones in check. A half dozen medical studies have borne this out. Their findings didn't seem to be influenced by other conditions or habits such as obesity, smoking, drinking, or exercise. The thing that mattered most was friends. What's more, research is showing that you can extend your life expectancy by having the right kind of friends." Proverbs 12:26 talks about a man choosing his friends wisely. Now, I'm not talking about the people we have connections with. I'm not talking about the people that we interact with on a daily basis. I'm talking about friends. I'm talking about those friends who we do life with, those who we have connected ourselves to as in a dependent relationship, bonded together. And Scripture pretty well clearly states, be careful in choosing those you are friends with. 1 Corinthians 15:33, we've looked at it a lot. It said, corrupt company spoils good morals. So friends we choose will determine the kind of life we have. And I want us to look at that because in Proverbs he provides two lists that I want us to look at. But a survey was taken of 40,000 Americans, and they asked, what qualities do you look for a friend? Maybe that's what we talked about with friends, but when you're thinking about choosing a friend, what do you look for? Godliness, integrity, loyalty, honesty, positive, Okay? The three top ones in the survey were the ability to keep a confidence. That was number one. Number two was loyalty, and number three was warmth and affection. What do we look for in friends? There are some things that Solomon tells us to avoid. Those who are to avoid, and here's a list. He says, avoid the violent. We looked at it in chapter 1. Those who are always saying, come along with us, let's lay in wait, let's shed somebody's blood, we'll have a lot of things. The violent person, the gossip. Somebody who's always talking about somebody else. Here's what one guy said. You can be reasonably sure that if they were talking to you about somebody else, that they're talking about you to somebody else. That they are going to share stories. They're not going to keep anything confidential. So the gossip is an unworthy friend. The angry and quick-tempered. Anybody know anybody has a short fuse? Chapter 22, verse 24 says, do not make friends with a hot-tempered man, and do not associate with one easily angered. I'm going to kind of go through these quickly. So, number 4, those who pursue personal pleasure as their first priority. Chapter 23, verses 20 and 21 says, do not join with those who drink too much. That's the right verse? Yep. Do not join with those who drink too much or gorge themselves on meat. For drunkards and gluttons become poor, and drowsiness clothes them in rags. You know anybody that just parties? I think that's what it says to me, is that don't be associating with those people who are partiers. The rebellious. Think about that idea of rebellion. How do you know? Watch them. What do those people have to say about their teachers? How do those people talk about those who are in authority at school? How do people talk about their boss? How do they talk about their parents? How do they talk about anyone as older adults? How do we talk about our government? How do we talk about, are they resistant to authority? He says, don't associate with them. Don't associate with the unreliable. Here, Proverbs 25:18 says, like a club or sword or a sharp arrow is the man who gives false testimony. Like a bad tooth or a lame foot is reliance on the unfaithful in times of trouble. Is that person going to be there when you need them? Are they going to do what they say they will do? Watch them, associate with, watch and see how they live. He says also avoid the flatterer. Have you ever encountered somebody like that who comes up and they just start telling you all this great stuff about you? What's the first question that goes through your mind? What do you want? I wonder what they want. Because we're cynical enough to know when somebody's heaping that kind of praise on us, especially if it's insincere and not truthful, there's an ulterior motive. The verse says they are laying a snare for your feet. What's that? A salesman. Well, for all those who may have been salesmen, that was Ron Thornhill. The flatterer. And lastly, the one who is a user. He says, Solomon puts it like this. He says, many curry favor with a ruler, and everyone is a friend of a man who gives gifts. A poor man is shunned by his relatives. How much more do his friends avoid him? Now I know why my relatives never come and see me. Have you ever had someone want to be your friend just simply because of what you had? Or wanted to be their friend simply because of what they had? And they got the latest game system at that house. But when all that's gone, notice how quickly friends disappear. Somebody suggested the prodigal son may have been a great example. left home with lots of money, went out and partied. Although Scripture does not say he had lots of friends and clingers on, it's an assumption to believe that he spent his money and they were helping him spend his money, but when it was gone, they were gone. There are those out there who will use you and take advantage of you, and when you have nothing else left to offer them, they will cast you away like yesterday's newspaper. So there are some we shouldn't pursue. But he goes on to tell us there are those we should pursue, and he identifies the first as the wise. Now, what is wisdom? Skillful living. What's skillful living? Somebody that has life figured out. Somebody seems to know how life works. And it says, be friends to the wise because you will become wise. Check out people who seem to have it figured out. The committed. Chapter 18, verse 24. We've probably heard this one 100 times. A man of many companions may come to ruin, but there is a friend who sticks closer than a brother. Who's the one who's never going to forsake you? Who's the one that's never going to abandon you? Is there a friend, you know, don't take this the wrong way, but if you get thrown in jail at 4 a.m. in the morning, who's the guy that's going to be there with you? Who's the guy that's going to be there? No matter of distance, no matter cause, no matter the circumstance, you know when you call them, they're going to be there. What's that? They're already there. Chances are, if you're at jail at 4 in the morning, they've been there before. Yeah, if you have that kind of friend. The compassionate. The one who cares. Chapter 17, verse 9 says, he who covers over an offense promotes love, but whoever repeats the matter separates friends. Is that person going to love you and care about you no matter what you do? Are they going to be constantly forgiving and grace and mercy to you and still be your friend no matter how many times you fail? They understand and they are compassionate, confidential. I can tell that person anything, and I know that's where it's going to stop. I want you to know, the one person I know that can keep a secret better than anybody is my wife. You know, there have been things that people have talked to her about, and down the road a couple weeks, that person will come to me and say, did you I said, I don't have any idea what you're talking about. You mean your wife didn't tell you? No, my wife didn't tell me because she told you she was not going to tell anybody. Can you tell that person anything and know that it's going to look for people who are going to keep your confidence? Look for honest people. 27 verse 5. It says, better is open rebuke than hidden love. Honesty. They'll tell you how they feel. They'll tell you what they're thinking. Look for people who are honest. Look for people who are constructive. Look at verse 17 of chapter 27. As iron sharpens iron, so one man sharpens another. What does that mean? It's a friend who is constructive. His whole aim is helping you become a better person rather than a bitter person. Everything they have to say to you is for your own good. And I hate that statement when somebody, I'm telling you this for your own good. But they always speak that truth with a coating of love. Because you know them, because you know their heart, they are looking out for your best interests and seeking to help you become the best one available. And then the consistent. We looked at it already. Proverbs 17:17 reminds us, my pages quit sticking together, a friend loves at all times, and a brother is born for adversity. It seems like a friend is just there, but brothers are born for adversity. There's that family connection. When things get hard, when things get difficult, look for the person who's never going to change. Those are the ones we should pursue. Those are the ones that Solomon identifies as being the most positive influence in our lives. But then it comes to the question, how do we develop and maintain friendships? A well-known author said, I found out in life that I can be a friend or I can be a writer. I cannot be both. That's sad. Simply saying it takes too much time to become a friend. So maybe the first thing we need to understand is when it comes to making friends, it has to be a priority. It has to be the one thing that is most important in our lives. Again, there is a story that came out. Bob and Sarah, they recognized they had not been very good neighbors, so they resolved they were going to be better. They decided the next time the moving van came into the neighborhood, they were going to bake a cake and they were going to go over and welcome the family to the neighborhood. And so the day came, the truck came into the neighborhood, she got busy, baked a cake, and her husband walked across the street and rang the doorbell, and the woman and the man came to the door and they said, "Welcome to the neighborhood." And the woman kind of got a sheepish look on her face and said, well, we're not moving in, we're moving out. We've lived here for 8 years. Obviously, the friendship wasn't high on their priority level. Friendship. Do you find it hard? Do you find it hard to make friends and keep friends? There was a article that says friendship in America has become optional. Part of it is the pace of life. Every 24 hours, 100,000 people move. Engineers, scientists, and MBAs change jobs 4 times every 10 years. 70% of Americans say they always feel rushed. More time commuting, second jobs, second families, work. There's little time left. We don't have time to build deep relationships. Oh, sure, we can have acquaintances. The average person living in the city has an acquaintance pool of over 500 people. Relative, neighbors, co-workers, and customers, but only 4 to 5 real friends. If you can say that you have 5 good friends, you're doing well. 5 friends in America is a luxury. I wonder how many of us can say we have 5 good friends. So what does it take? How does one go about making friends? I love this poem I found. It says, I went out to find a friend, but couldn't find one there. I went out to be a friend, and friends were everywhere. Proverbs 18:1 says, a man who would be a friend ought to be friendly. A man went to a psychiatrist for counseling, and he said, people just don't seem to like me. And the psychiatrist was writing some notes. He said, oh, excuse me, I didn't quite catch that. Could you repeat that? And he said, I said, people just don't seem to like me very well. Why can't you listen, you fathead? I think we have an answer. Why? How does one make friends? By being friendly. Let me give you 2 lists. 7 ways, 7 don'ts of friendship. Don't gossip about one another. You want to kill a friendship? Go and talk to somebody about your friend. Don't engage in senseless arguments. What's a senseless argument? It's interesting. Proverbs 17 says, when an argument starts up, if you drop the matter, it ends it. Why don't we drop a matter? Because being right and winning is more important than relationship. A senseless argument. We need to stop and ask ourselves the question, is this argument worth a friendship? Is this issue worth losing a relationship with somebody I say I care about? How often could we have a better relationship with people if we just didn't respond? Don't smother. 25:17 says, don't set foot in your neighbor's house too often. Roughly that. Have you ever had a smothering friend? You know what I mean by that? They are always there. And when you look and talk to someone else, they get offended. They are there constantly. And it's almost a suffocating relationship because there's no room for anybody else. If you want to ruin a friendship, smother it. Don't stick your nose where it doesn't belong. Some things just aren't our business. Keep your nose out of it. I love this one. Don't play bad jokes, or do play bad jokes on people, because that's one way of killing a relationship. If you haven't read it, Proverbs 26 puts it like this. And none of us would have ever experienced this. Like a madman shooting firebrands or deadly arrows is a man who deceives his neighbor and says, I was only joking. You ever heard that? I mean, they zing you to the heart, and then they say, man, don't get set. I was just kidding. You know, there are some pranks and some jokes that just shouldn't be done. And I am not coming to you with clean hands on that one. Sarcasm. You know, my daughter and I both say sarcasm is our defense against stupidity. And then I say, man, I don't know what they're upset about. I was just kidding. You know, we just need to use some discretion. Don't be quarrelsome and disagreeable, like the guy at the psychiatrist's office. You ever been around somebody that just always, if you say the sky is blue, they'll argue with you? They always want to make an issue of anything you say. They want to quarrel. They want to disagree. They want to be right. Don't hang around with those, or be insincere in your flattery. There's nothing wrong with a sincere compliment. But insincere flattery is just heaping things on people that you really don't believe. Those are the don'ts. Here's the do's. Live pleasing to the Lord. Proverbs 16:7 says, he who lives at peace with God, God makes all to live at peace with them. And I better read that because I think I messed up my paraphrase on it. 16 verse 7 says, when a man's ways are pleasing to the Lord, he makes even his enemies live at peace with him. You want friends? Get your life right with God. Get your relationship with the Lord in line, and that will become a part of that response. Be slow to anger. It's a tough one for me. You know, you have a long fuse. Be slow to respond. Every comment doesn't require a response. Have you found that to be true? Sometimes the best way is to really think about it. Think through it. And I should have looked it up because there's 4 things that guide a conversation. The first of them is what I'm about to say, is it true? To guide you through the way to respond to those things. Avoid unnecessary quarrels. Again, going back to that, is it worth the relationship? Speak gently. Speak gently. Proverbs 15, verse 1. A gentle answer turns away wrath, but a harsh word stirs up anger. It's not so much the answer we give, but it's the attitude we come up with the answer. You want to keep an argument going, just be a little harsh. Speak briefly. Keep your comments brief and short. Proverbs 10, verse 19. When words are many, sin is not absent, but he who holds his tongue is wise. What's the old saying? I heard it say, it's better to keep your mouth shut and thought a fool than to open your mouth and remove all doubt. Speak briefly. The less you say, the wiser you look. Be quick to show love. Always err on the side of love. Hatred stirs up dissension, but love covers over all wrongs. And then the last one, rebuke when necessary. Rebuke when necessary. Do you have the freedom to tell someone when they're wrong? Ephesians 4:15 says, speaking the truth in love. Speaking in order to build them up. Sometimes people need just to be told, that's dumb. There's a better way. Friendship. It's a life skill. Proverbs 18:24, we read earlier, says, one who has unreliable friends soon comes to ruin. And then the last part says, there is a friend who sticks closer than a brother. It's that verse where Jesus shows up in Proverbs. Who's the friend that sticks closer than the brother? A friend who will never fail you, friend who will never let you down. Because, folks, I want you to understand, no matter how good a friend that person may be, they will fail you. They will not be there when you need them at some point. They will say something that will offend you. Jesus is the one friend who will never fail. Jesus, in his ministry, talked about friendship, and he said the highest mark of friendship is greater love than this, that a man laid down his life for his friends. How many of you have a friend like that? How many of you have a friend, if you were sitting on death row, scheduled for execution tomorrow, and there was absolutely no doubt about your guilt, no question that you deserved the punishment, how many of you have a friend who would come to prison and step into your cell and say, I'll take your punishment for you? That's what Jesus did. Take a few minutes and wrap your head around that. That when we were guilty before God and we deserved death, we deserved the fires of hell, Jesus stepped in and said, I'll die for them. And let them go free. That's the absolute high point, test of absolute friendship. Jesus is the friend who sticks closer than a brother. The friend who did for you what no one else ever would or could. And that leads us right into taking time to remember his death. To remember that friend. I want you to take a few moments as those emblems are passed to think about the impact of that fact that while you were on death row, when you were heading for the cross, Jesus stepped in. And you are friends with God today because of the price Jesus was willing to pay then. I'm going to ask the men to get ready to serve those emblems as I pray. Father, thank you for Jesus. Thank you for the opportunity we have today to come and remember him. Thank you for the testimony of friendship. Father, the fact that Jesus in his ministry said, I call you friends. And all of us who have placed faith in him are friends. And Lord, today we are remembering the price of that friendship. a body that was treated abusively, blood that was shed on the cross, a last breath taken to satisfy your wrath and satisfy our condemnation. Lord, help us to reflect on that. Help us to see Jesus and to celebrate him today. In Jesus' name, amen.
In the morning when I rise, in the morning when I rise, in the morning when I rise, give me Jesus.